Okay, so we are today beginning at the very bottom of 80b, Tana Rabbana. Asar Tanai Tisna Yoshua, there were 10 conditions that Yehoshua placed on the people when the land of Israel was apportioned, was divided. So what we're going to see here is that the Gemara is trying to find legal basis for some of these public interest laws. And this first suggestion is that these things were instituted by Yehoshua as a condition. In other words, how does Beis Din, or how does the halacha have the right to intrude on I guess what you would call individual rights, private property, or so on? What's the mechanism by which these things are done? So this contention is that the whole idea that people have land, that people have ownership of land, is that there were conditions attached. Yes, you have private ownership of land, but here are the conditions. Sheyehu Marin Bacharshin, that people can send their flocks to graze in forests, right? Even if they're privately owned, and even without the permission of the owner of the forest. Umalaktin eitzim bistosem, you can gather wood from other people's fields. We'll see some details about that, under what circumstances, what conditions. Umalaktin asavim b'chol makom chutz mitiltan, and you can gather grass for animal fodder any place except where tilton, which is translated here as fenugreek, is growing. So according to Rashi, says that if fenugreek is growing there, the having grass growing alongside it is beneficial for the crop. And so although grass is generally assumed to be available to anyone who wants it, it doesn't apply where it's beneficial for the crop. And by grazing the crop, you would damage, grazing the grass, you would damage the crop. The kotmim netios b'chol makom, and you can cut off buds or shoots, except chutz migrofios shel zayis, except the measure of 2 fistfuls of the stump of an olive tree. So apparently the olive tree can regenerate. Those could still produce fruit or still grow, but anywhere else, if there's just like a little bud branch sticking out, you can cut that off, even if it's someone else's. If let's say a spring suddenly appears on someone's property, that water is considered public. Anybody can help themselves from that water. Umechakin biyama shel Tveria. You can fish in the Kinneret, in the Sea of Tveria. Ubilvad shelo yifros kela v'yamidas asfina. Now the sea itself was not apportioned to any individual, right? It's a lake. Only land was apportioned, but since the lake is entirely within the boundaries of one tribe, Naphtali, perhaps they had the power to deny fishing rights to any other tribe, but so anybody can fish here. As long as you don't spread out like some kind of a like a cloth, a sail, which would prevent boats from passing through. So you can fish, but you can't impede access to other people. If you're traveling and you need to relieve yourself, you can do it behind a fence, behind a wall, even if the field is full of saffron, which presumably I guess saffron maybe requires a little better quality. Like you don't want people trampling on your saffron, I guess. It's maybe more delicate. Umahalchim b'shvile harashusa shetered revia shnia, and you can walk on the paths on places that you're allowed to walk until the second rain. So the idea the issue here is, are you going to like in the winter, in the rainy season, can you trample the fields? That's bad for the crops that are growing. So until the second rain, it's still dry and you can still walk on it without doing any damage. But after the second rain, then you have to leave it be. And you can like wander off to the sides of the roads. You can wander off to the sides of the roads, in other words, off of the main road, but on private property, in order to avoid these kind of big bumps in the road. V'hatoa bein hakramim, mefasig ve'ola mefasig v'yored. Let's say you got lost in a vineyard. You can cut your way out. Like imagine you're in this thicket of vines and you don't know which way to go. You can cut your way out, even though it's private property. Oh, the last thing is that someone who dies and he's not got no one to bury him, doesn't have his own burial plot, then then he can be buried right there where he died. Again, whether it's private property or public property, that's reserved for that person who dies there, or given to that person who dies there. Okay, so now the Gemara will analyze a little further each one. Sheyumarin b'charshin. People can send your animals to graze in forests. Amar Papa lo amarin elodaka b'gasa. That's only if we're talking about small animals in a big forest, then it doesn't do much damage. Daka b'daka, but a small animal in a small forest, v'gasa b'gasa, or a large animal in a large forest. That's too much. That causes too much damage. But kosher cane gasa b'daka. Certainly, a large animal in a small forest can't do that. We don't allow that. You can gather wood from someone else's field. We're only talking about small small branches, small shrubs or whatever. But like major trees, which have more value, you don't have the permission to harvest them, if you will. And even the small, worthless trees, like like thorn bushes or whatever. That's only if they are still growing from the ground level. But solution, if they've already been cut off, you don't have license for that because looks like they've been harvested. Somebody took the trouble to cut them down. That means he wants them. So we don't give you permission to take them. And even if it's still growing, that's only if it's fresh. If it's got moisture in it, but dry wood, you can't take that because that is presumably the owner wants them as firewood or whatever. And so you can, and only if like you can't uproot things, so you can trim the bushes, but you can't uproot the bushes because then they'll stop growing altogether, and that is damage that we don't allow you to do to someone else's property. The third thing, you can collect grass for your fodder, for animal fodder, except in a fenugreek field. Remember the tilton malala safim. Are you saying that that's because fenugreek benefits from having grass growing around it? But we have a competing source. Tilton shas also if you have fenugreek that grew with other grasses, and you don't have to uproot the grasses right away, because eventually, you're going to So if it's kilayim, right? So if you plant kilayim, you don't have to uproot it right away because we assume that the owner will eventually uproot them because they're bad, presumably because they're bad for the other crop, for the fenugreek. So doesn't that contradict what we're saying here? Amar Virmia, Okasha kan lozera kan lozirin. If you're in the Mishnah, or in our Mishnah, we're talking about where you're growing the fenugreek for the seed, kan lozirin, but if you're growing it for the stalks, then Lazera Kashul, then it's different. Lazera Kashula Savim. If you're going up for seed, then grass, having grass around is bad. The Mekachshe, because they make it grow slower or they weaken it. They take the nutrients out of the soil, which the fenugreek needs to grow its seeds. Lazirin Malila, but for the stalks, then the Chikaime Bene Asavim, when it's growing among other grasses, Mirkava, then it's like they somehow get supported by the grasses. It's a little unclear what the idea here is. Like it's like if you put some crops need a trellis to support the weight of the crop. Um, so here we're assuming that these must be pretty significant weeds. Maybe they act as a trellis kind of thing. So if you're growing it to grow the fenugreek then it's actually even though it may take away some of the nutrients from the soil, but it's on the net benefit is there because it supports the growing stock. You buy same, or you can answer kan ladam, kan lebehema. Depends if you're growing the fenugreek for human consumption or for animal consumption. The kevan del behema, if you're doing it for an animal to consume, asavim name mibayla, you also want the grass, right? So it's like you don't care if the fenugreek is affected that much. All the nutrients are there, whether it's in the grass or in the fenugreek. The animals will get the benefit of the nutrients in the soil. But if you're growing it for human consumption, people aren't going to eat the grass; they're going to eat the fenugreek. So, so we care. We don't. So we don't want to have the grass there. We know idea, and so well, how do you know? Like you're so looking at it from the perspective of the person who's passing by and wants to collect the grass for his animals, right? How do you know if the owner of the field is growing the fenugreek for human or animal consumption? Or Papa, Share Mishare. Well, if it's like orderly, if it's been planted in an orderly way, then that means you want to harvest it for people. Lo Share Mishare. But if it's not planted in rows in an orderly way, lebehema, then that must mean it's for animals. Okay, fourth thing, the kutmin netia b'chol makom. You can cut off a shoot from anywhere in order to replant it somewhere. Chutz migrophios zayis, except for olive trees. Pirshu Rabbi Tanchum Rabbi Birias mishum zaken achad. So these two Rabbi Tanchum and Rabbi Birias explain this. Bezayis kavesa. We're talking about an olive tree. You have to leave when you cut off a shoot. You have to leave at least an egg-sized part of the shoot still on the tree. You can't cut it right down to the stump. If you're cutting off of reeds or vines, then you can cut from like there's a knot, like a knuckle or something. Ushar ilanos, any other kind of tree, mean ubo shel ilan, from the like the translates here the fruits of the tree, meaning the soft, the thinner branches. That's what you can cut off, but not the hardier branches. Below means chudo shel ilan, not from the main trunk of the tree. Means chadosh she'eno osa peros, and you can also only do this from a new tree that doesn't have fruit yet. V'lo min yashan shu osa peros. You can't cut a shoot from a tree that's already producing fruit. Mimakom she'eno ro'etz hachama, and also you can only cut out from the part that's shaded from the sun, not that's in the sun. Presumably those won't grow well anyway, and so the owner doesn't mind if you remove them. Not from the place that is in the sun. The pasuk and the bracha of Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of the Torah to Yosef, the bracha is umimeged tu shamash, the bounty of the crops of the sun. So indicating that it's where the sun shines is where the crops grow. If you have a new spring that pops up, anybody can draw water from it. You sure you can take the water, but you have to pay the owner. You have to pay the fee for drawing the water. No, we don't hold like that. The halacha is that spring pops up in your property, it's everybody can have access to it at no cost. This is as opposed, of course, to like if you dig a well, that's a different thing. That's why it talks about a a spring that pops up. But if you dig a well, then you're entitled to the water. You can fish in the Kinneret, as long as you don't put out something that will impede the passage of boats. And you can catch fish with nets. So Tanrabanan, the Gemara expands on this. At the beginning, the tribes agreed amongst themselves. You can't like spread out some kind of a sail and impede the boat's passage. You can use nets. So this brisa is apparently there's different ways to interpret this, but to me, it's like this is an alternate view of what is the source of these public rights and private property. In this case, we're saying that it was an agreement between the Shvatim rather than a condition imposed by Yehoshua. Although you could also read this that Yehoshua came afterwards. Like first they made this agreement, and then Yehoshua came and added the using hooks and lines to the original agreement of nets. Tanar Rabban, the rabbis taught Yamashal is very abakal Naphtali Haisa. The Kinneret is all within the portion of Naphtali, the tribe of Naphtali. And also there's like a small strip of land on its south, on the south side, so that they could, I mean, what good is owning the lake if you can't walk on its shore? So they reserved for themselves a small strip of land on the south end of the lake. Moshe says to Naphtali, your inheritance is the sea and the south, so meaning the south shore of the sea. Tanya. We have a brisa. Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar Omer, Tlushin Shebaharim, trees that were like uprooted in the mountains. That belongs to everybody, to all the tribes. But if there are trees that are still growing, then it belongs to whichever tribe it's in, whose portion it's in. Every shevet, every tribe has a share in a mountain, in lowlands, in a desert, Negev, which I'm not sure how to translate that. Here he says open country, dry. Negev really means desert or dry land. Uvaemek, and the valleys. So everybody's got a piece of all these kinds of lands. Shenamar. The Torah says, or Moshe says to the people, turn and go to the Har HaAmori and all its neighbors. Barava, Bahar, Bashalav, Vanego, Vofaya. Lists these 4 different kinds of land. So implying that everybody gets a piece of Arava, a piece of Har, a piece of Shelah, a piece of Negev, and a piece of seashore. So geographically, I'm not sure what this means, because I don't think that you could demonstrate that that each tribe had all of this within its borders. I wonder if it means that there are like public lands that pieces of all of these things that were not apportioned to specific tribes, which but that doesn't seem to be supported by the general discussion here. And you find the same thing, the land of the Amori and the Kanani and the Prizi, they all had the same features. So Bo Har Amori comes to the Amori and all of its neighbors. It shows that all the neighbors of the Amori, including the Kanani and the Prizi, they had all of these types of land. Okay, Manifnin, so yeah, so again, I don't know how to interpret this, because I don't think you can find mountains in all of the in each of the tribes portions. V'nifnin lachar yagader v'afilu b'sada shehim le'akarkom. You can relieve yourself behind a fence, even in the field of saffron. That's all. Well, it's just telling you that you can take a stone from the fence to clean yourself afterwards. Even on Shabbos, you can do that. Because that is taking apart the wall. And so that's not malachas machshavas, and so for this need, you can remove a stone from the wall for this purpose. Marzutra Chasida Shakal Madar. Marzutra took one and then he put it back. Took a rock and put it from the fence and put it back. And he said to his attendant, Zil Shirke, like after Shabbos, go back and cement it back in place. So he didn't want to take advantage of the license that he was granted. He wanted to leave it exactly as he had found it. You can walk on these on paths that are permitted until this. On the edges of the path until the second rain. Rav Papa V'Haididan, and Rav Papa was in Bavel, so the soil of Bavel had different characteristics. Afilu tal kashela, like even just the nightly dew makes it so that if people tread on it after it's been moistened with dew, it's bad for the soil, and therefore you would not be able to. Of course, we're not talking about license outside of Eretz Yisrael, but he's just emphasizing the point that it depends on the condition of the land. If it's so wet that it would be damaged by people trampling on it, then you no longer have license to walk on. Masakin lutzida drachim b'nei sedos drachim. You can turn off to the sides of the roads because of like bumps in the road. Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda were traveling together. And Shmuel, when the road became too bumpy, Shmuel went on the side of the road. Like we're not in Eretz Yisrael, we're in Bavel. So what gives you the right to walk off of the main road? I say that Yeshua's conditions apply even outside Bavel, even outside the land of Israel, even in Bavel. Which is a little strange because, like, what gives Yehoshua the right to dictate conditions about Bavel? But it seems to be like, first of all, whose property rights are we concerned about? Probably just Jewish property rights. And so he's saying that the conditions that Yehoshua instituted applied to Jewish people, even in Bavel. Rabbi and Rabbi Chia were traveling. And when the road became too bumpy, they went to the side. But Rabbi Yehuda was in front of them on the road, and he was walking on the main road. I'm like, Rabbi Chia, mihu zeh shamar gedula b'fanenu, who's showing off in front of us? I'm like, Rabbi Chia said to him, Shema Rabbi Yehuda Mekunusa Talmidi, that looks like maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda, my student. He's always doing things for the right reasons. L'shem shamayim. Kimatu l'gabe chatzeh. So they caught up to him, and they saw it was him, Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei, Elav Yehuda Knusat. If you weren't who you are, Gizartinu l'shakach begizra the parzala. We'd chop off your leg. Basically, like, we understand that you're doing this without any ulterior motive, but anybody else, we would assume is just showing off, or maybe trying to make it difficult for other people by insisting that you have to go on the bumpy road, and we would oppose that. Someone who's lost in the vineyards, you can cut your way out. If you see somebody lost in the vineyards, you can cut your way through to reach him until you bring him back to the city or to the road. And also a person who himself is lost in the vineyards. You can cut yourself out until you get to the city or the road. So Gemara says, like, why do you have to say, yeah, it's the same whether you're cutting your way in or cutting your way out? About the same, I might have thought Chavero who like, if you're seeing from the outside, you see where somebody is, so you can cut directly to where he is, right? It's not like you're searching for a way out, right? The guy on the inside is searching for a way out, so you could cut this way, cut that way. He's not necessarily going to cut the shortest path to where he's trying to get to, because he doesn't know where it is. But the guy who's cutting from the outside and he sees you, maybe he's like higher elevation, he can see where you are. You know exactly where to cut the shortest path to get him out. But the guy in the middle doesn't know where he's going. So maybe you can't cut your way out. And you should just retrace your steps. Get your way out of the jungle, retrace your steps till you're out, and then go around the vineyard so you won't get lost. Maybe you don't have the license, Kamashwan, so it tells us that you have the right to cut your way out. So Gemara says, Daraisa, cutting your way out of a jungle, that's a Daraisa, that's not a Yoshua thing. Tanya, Hashavas Gufa Minayin. You have a rule of Hashavas Aveda that you have to return a lost object to its owner. What if you yourself are lost? So you have to return yourself to yourself, as it were, which would be our case, right? Where in order to return yourself to a status of not being lost, there's a mitzvah to do so. So Talmud Lomar V'Hashevoso. So the Torah tells you that by V'Hashevoso, that you return yourself to yourself, as it were. So then, why do you need Yoshua to tell you can cut your way out of the forest, out of the jungle? So Gemara says, the Torah law is that you have to stay like on the edges of the vineyard. Asahu talking to Yeshua came and said, the mafsig v'ol and mafsig v'yard. You can cut your way through. You can be more liberal about getting your way out. And the last thing, meis mitzvah Kamma, that a person who dies on the road and there's no one to bury him, he can be buried right there. Ramina asks a question. If you find a dead body lying on the side of the road, actually, not if you find him in the middle of the road, so then you move the body to the side of the road and bury it there. Stay bor, stay near. If the road has on its is surrounded by a fallow field and a plowed field, mifaneh will stay bor. Then take the body to the fallow field and bury it there. Lay near who stays there. If you have a plowed field and a field that's already been sowed with crops, mifaneh will stay near. But move him to the plowed field. You stand boros, stand neros, stand zeros. But what if the fields on either side of the road were the same? So then you choose. It's a pick'em situation. Anyway, why don't you just bury him in the middle of the road, right? In any of these cases, you're saying move the body and bury it off the road. The grass is on rough bibi, but mutal al meisar. We're talking about a dead body lying across a narrow path or a narrow passage in the road, and mitoch shenita lefanosa, a mefanei l'chol makom sheyirtzeh. And then then obviously then then it's obvious that you can move the body because you're going to impede the road while you're burying him. And also there's a question of tumah on the road. So since you can move it, then you have to decide which place you move it to. And there's a pick'em situation where, but that's why the Meis Mitzvah Kamma wouldn't apply there. Okay, Amre Asar. Now, we started out by saying there were 10 things that Yoshua stipulated, right, or imposed, or made a condition of. So Hane Chatzrei Havyan, but we actually listed 11. Where answers Mahalchim B'Shila Rishus Shlomo Arba. No, walking on the paths until the second rain. That was actually not Yoshua. That was Shlomo. Kedutanya. Hooray, Shekalu Perosav Minasadeh. If the crops have already been harvested, Eino Miniach B'nei Adam Likanis B'Tosadeu. And a person still doesn't let people wander through his orchard, right? Like there's no reason for it. I understand when you have crops growing, people could steal or people could damage, right? But once the fruit's already been harvested, then why wouldn't you let people walk through the orchard? Ma Brias almost. What do people say about him? Ma no yesh l'plani. Why wouldn't you give us access? Doesn't cost you anything. Ma Brias mazikosla. And how do people damage your field if it's not if nothing's growing there? About such a person, the Torah says, the Tanakh says, "Mios tov al tikrei ra." When you can be doing something good, don't be called bad. In other words, like it's not nice, right? You you have the right to deny people passage, but and this was written by Shlomo, right? This is in Mishlei. So Shlomo was the one who said, like, don't be so nasty to people. So he was so from this we get the idea that Shlomo was the one that said that instituted the idea about walking on paths in a situation where they won't be damaged. So Mar says, is it actually written there? It's not written anywhere in the Tanakh. So yeah, I'm sorry. I identified this as we'll see it in a second where it comes from Mishlei. Like this is just a saying that people say, right? Why are you attributing it to Shlomo? So where it says, yeah, that actually can be attributed. Ksiv ki Dafna. Something similar is written. Al timna tov mibalav bios le'el v'yad chalasos. Shlomo wrote in Mishlei, don't deny something good from its owner when you have the power to do so. So that idea behind the saying that people use is actually from Mishlei, and so we attribute it to Shlomo. But two like us, and Al says, "What aren't there? There are things that Yoshua instituted, like Rabbi Yehuda." Rabbi Yehuda said the following: the Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, B'shas Hotzas Zavalim, when it's time to muck out the stable, Other Motzi Zavula Lushusarabim. You can do that into the public domain. Vitzovero Kol Shloshim, and you can actually pile it there for up to 30 days. Nishuf Baragle Adam Baragle Behema. So it'll be trampled by people and animals walking by. Shalmanas Kain Hinchul Yoshua Yisrael Saretz. That this is a condition that Yoshua established when he apportioned the land to the people. So there's an 11th thing according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why only 10? And furthermore, Ve'ayika Rabbi Yishmael ben Osho, Rabbi Yochanan ben Barucha. Rabbi Yishmael also had another one, the Tanya. Rabbi Yishmael ben Osho, Rabbi Yochanan ben Barucha. Where Tanai Bastin, who it's a Tanai Bastin is like a something imposed by the court on the public. That the person could go to his neighbor's field, and cut off the a branch of his tree, in order to save his own bees that built a hive, let's say on that bough uh, of the tree. But also so like your bees went and left your property and went and built a hive on your neighbor's branch. You can cut off the branch as long as you compensate him for the branch in order to get your bees back. Usnai Beis, and also another thing established by the court, Sheheze Shofech that Umasul Duvshano Shel Chavero. So let's say you're transporting a barrel of wine and you see somebody who's got a barrel of honey, and the barrel of honey is leaking. So the ounce for ounce, the honey is more valuable. So you can, if you so you are required to empty your barrel and catch catch the honey leaking out of your neighbor's barrel. If an hotel domain, and it's not like you have to take the monetary loss. Yes, to compensate you for the loss of your wine, but at least he saved his honey. It's not basing, and another condition of basing, another rule established by basing. If you've got a donkey load full of wood, and then you come across someone whose donkey is unable to transport flax, right? Let's say the donkey broke its leg or something. So you should get rid of your wood, save your neighbor's flax, and also the same thing. You don't have to take the monetary loss. You can collect the value of your wood from the flax owner. That's also a condition, same idea. So this should also be included according to Rabbi Yishmael in the list. So the answer is not. This was only an opinion of just one person, or Rabbi Yishmael ben Broka. So that's not counted in the list. But didn't Rav Avin say when he came? He said, "Echad ilan hanotel letoch shtei chavero, ve'echad ilan hasamuch lemeitzar, mevi v'karei." You So if you have a tree that the branches overhang somebody else's property, or a tree that's nearby your neighbor's property, maybe viveka, right? So it's drawing its nutrients partly from your neighbor's field. So still, you bring the bikurim. So there's another one that should be included in the list. Whose idea was it there were only 10? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So in other words, this so it's Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one that said in the Mishnah there were only 10. He's only counting ones that are enumerated in the Mishnah, but this idea of the bikurim that you give bikurim from your tree, even if the fruit was overhanging your neighbor's lot. That is only something that was reported by Rabbi Avin. That's not a Tanaitic source. So that's why it's not counted among the 10. Rav Gavia mi Kasil Masni Lebeheder. Rav Gavia from this place Kasil taught as follows: Rabbi Talchum, Rabbi Biria, Samri Mishum Zakin Echad. Rabbi Talchum and Rabbi Biria said in the name of one elder, one of Rabbi Shimon Levi, Asar Tanai and Hisna Yoshua. So in other words, Rav Gavia quoted this not as a brisa. The idea that there were 10 was not a brisa, but it was a source by an Amora, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So that the 10 things were not taught in the brisa, but so it could be that there were only 10 and at the time, or 10 that he knew of, and then this 11th one was stated by Rav Avin. And that's why it's not included in the 10. It was from a different source. So it wasn't all from the Tanaitic source. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. And that is the end of Yeshua's institutions. And tomorrow we will deal with Ezra's institutions. There were 10 takanos that Ezra made. We'll pick it up here tomorrow morning. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.